This man's life has lost its zest. For him, the kick's gone out of living.
Hugh, telephone.
All right. Hello.
Hugh, boy. This is Ralph Collier. Listen, boys, this is big. Now, I wouldn't do a thing like this to anybody I liked, but a guy like you, well, who cares? So here's the deal.
Hey, Dad, you know that place down by the creek?
Hush, Kenny. That call, what does Ralph want?
Oh, he has some kind of a harebrained scheme up his sleeve. He'll be by tonight.
Oh, Hugh. Ralph always manages to get you all upset.
Bored stiff, you mean?
And that's another thing.
I've made an appointment. 1:30. Dr. Bogart. Why, though, I'll never know.
Because it just isn't natural the way you've been dragging around this way. After all, everybody should have something to be interested in.
Doesn't bother me any.
Well, it does me. I think there's something wrong with your thyroid or something. Like Fred.
Well, that's the story on Hugh. No interest at home or at the office either. Even when his boss leans on him, he rolls with the punch. Why get in a sweat over a lot of busy work? Same way with friends. Don Finney likes to talk hobbies. Hugh couldn't care less. His appointment with Dr. Bogart gives him a good excuse to leave. Physically, Hugh's okay, the doctor reports. No thyroid deficiency to slow him down. But has he been shortchanging himself on sleep? Is he depressed about anything? Has trouble developed at work or at home? The answer's no. The verdict? Boredom. Dr. Bogart's advice is for Hugh to find some all-consuming interest in life. What kind of nonsense is that? You flat can't do it. Hugh's condition may be serious. He'd better check with Dr. Jeffers over in the medical center. Not a psychiatrist. Yes, a psychiatrist. Boredom's an emotional state. Out of hand, it calls for specialized treatment. Well, maybe only, well, why make a federal case out of it? After all, what difference does it make if a man's bored? What harm can it do? Ed Vance, Hugh's boss, could answer those questions. For instance, he'd like to put Hugh in charge of the new branch office. But a job like that calls for enthusiasm and drive. Ed's afraid that Hugh just wouldn't spark the team. The Country Club Executive Committee. Hugh's nominated, but Don Finney says no. That committee job's not the place for a wet blanket. At home, too, Hugh's boredom exacts a price. In terms of his relations with Loretta, for example. By nature, Loretta's an enthusiastic person. But no enthusiasm can hold up long under Hugh's boredom. It's happened so many times. It all creates conflict in Loretta. Sometimes, subconsciously, she strikes out. But mostly, she herself loses interest and enthusiasm. It's as if Hugh's boredom were contagious, as if Loretta had somehow contracted it, like a virus. And for Kenny, the situation's even worse. Hugh has no time for the boy's enthusiasm. How long will Kenny be able to stay interested himself? Already the contagion of boredom is affecting his schoolwork. Disciplinary problems are beginning to develop also, problems that tie in closely with Kenny's boredom. Presents don't help. Neither does punishment. Ken's grades keep going down. What to do about it? What not to do comes easier. It's like with Ann Galloway down the block. She's bored, so she drinks. More and more and more she drinks. Sam Haglund across the street has a private remedy for boredom, too. He makes friends with every $10 tramp who comes along. Young Link Nagel down at the filling station gets his kicks racing the cops. Trouble is, that kind of business can get you into some pretty messy situations. And more important, it doesn't really solve the problem of boredom at all. You forget your frustrations for a moment, sure, but there's no real satisfaction. Excitement gets to be like Ann Galloway's whiskey. The kick wears off. Why do bored people do such things? Ann claims it's the monotony of housework that gets her down. She dealt satisfactorily with monotony when she had a job, though, back before she was married. Actually, her real trouble isn't monotony. It's that she grew up feeling that being a woman, a housewife, is an empty, meaningless, thankless task. Her job, on the other hand, was exciting and meaningful. But Ann's husband won't hear of her working now. The result? Inner conflict for Ann. Conflict between the demands of marriage and her personal hunger for a feeling of self-worth. Her boredom, her drinking, they're the symptoms of that conflict. Sam Haglund claims his trouble is his wife's stupidity. It bores him to distraction. But really, though, his big problem is Woodhall's, his competition across the street. So again, the issue's conflict. Reality versus Sam's picture of himself as worthy of success. But it's a conflict that Sam can't bring himself to acknowledge. The end result, boredom. But it's boredom for which he's found a remedy of sorts. A boost for his ego in a pattern of behavior that dates clear back to his teens. Sam couldn't compete then either. But there generally seemed to be some girl around to take the sting out of defeat. Link Nagel, he breaks the monotony of slum life by shooting craps. Though he doesn't know it, the roots of his boredom lie deep in hatred of authority. And yet self-preservation demands that he hold his rage under control. Hence, conflict, hence, boredom. Where does Hugh fit into this conflict-boredom sequence? How did he develop his present pattern? The answer to those questions goes back a lot of years. When Hugh was a baby, he acted spontaneously, did just what he felt like without restriction. And then his mother began to interfere with input and outgo, telling him when to go to sleep, when to wake up, enraging him, soothing him. He learned that sidewalks are hard, stoves are hot, and even little girls can bite. Cleanliness became a virtue, so did green beans. and obedience to orders. He learned that his mother could be shocked. And by the time he reached school age, he stammered just a little. Other kids laughed. He tried to pretend that he didn't care. He worked harder and harder in school so that he could show them that he was just as good as they were. Arithmetic seemed to come easiest for him. Later, algebra was a cinch. In geometry, he got straight A's. Not that helped much on the dance floor. Mostly, he still spent his spare time alone. Hugh's father was his best friend. He taught him all about tools, about machinery, about hunting, about people, especially that people with white shirts have money and people with blue shirts don't. Hugh's father hated the white shirts' prosperity. They'd created nothing, and yet workers still couldn't meet their bills. To Hugh's mother, the creation part didn't matter. To her, it was money that was important. Hugh could see her side when the time came to meet his father's funeral expenses. The loneliness was even worse. But Hugh went on, though, through college, then into engineering. It was a good life out in the field, working and building the way his dad had always said he should. And then he met a girl, the girl. Only it turned out that Loretta didn't like the kind of life a construction tramp leads. When Hugh got the chance for an office job, he grabbed it. But then Loretta began to object to other things. She didn't like Hugh's friends. She didn't like his crudities, his fussing with mechanical gadgets. If Hugh put up a fight, well, there were always those headaches she had. Always seemed to come at bedtime. Not that Hugh struggled very hard. His mother had trained him too well for that. The higher Hugh rises in the firm, the more he rebels, subconsciously, against the white-shirted public relations frame of mind demanded of him. And yet his family and his financial problems tie him closer and closer to his job. It's a conflict situation. Instead of acknowledging how he feels, he hides his anger behind a bland mask of false cordiality, public relations. The people that Loretta forces him to meet socially are dull and boring. He's cut off from the field projects he loves. And in the cause of clean hands, Loretta has ruled his workshop out of bounds. His relationships with Loretta have deteriorated badly. Night after night, it's the same. Too torn by internal conflict to fight, he sees himself through the eyes of his mother and Loretta. Instead of looking to his own desires, he takes it for granted his main goal in life should be to meet standards set by his wife. With mounting tension comes boredom, a symptom of that conflict between the life that Hugh leads and his basic emotional needs. In effect, boredom says, I want to do something, but I don't even dare admit it. So instead of bringing it out into the open, I'll let my attention wander. I'll develop what looks like fatigue, supreme disinterest in what I'm supposed to do. In Hugh's case, the situation has been getting worse for years. By now, it's dubious that he can deal with it effectively without outside help. What might he do about it? Well, he could find at least part of the answer right out in his own backyard, watching son Kenny. Ken's eager to build a tool shed, but sometimes he gets tired of it. Football offers a change of pace. Swimming, too. Bike riding. In other words, there's variety in Ken's interests, and change itself is a remedy for mild degrees of boredom, as well as a universal human need. If you do enough different things, there will be little chance to grow bored with any one of them. Ed Vance is another one who could teach Hugh ways to deal with boredom, because Ed's so taken up with striving to outdo the competition that he's hardly aware of all the busy work he has to handle. His drive to win shapes his whole way of living. He makes no pretense that it doesn't. Whether he's hiring a rival's key man or just playing poker at home on Saturday night. To fight boredom, then, each of us needs to take a cold, clear look at the rules he lives by. For only thus can we resolve our conflicts. We must face our drives with utter honesty, release our tensions, satisfy our inner needs. A case in point, Don Finney has a need to dominate. But people who needle you can't always be controlled. Don knows that, too. So he takes out his frustrations on wood. Something that he can shape at will, something that can't fight back. But a man's patterns are already formed. The best place to stop boredom is back in childhood, before it even starts. Interest is such a fragile thing. It dies so easily. Hugh senses that sometimes, like today. That nail that Ken bent, it brought back so many things. The day so long ago when Hugh's father showed him how to use a block to pull a nail. We help ourselves by helping others, even more when we help our children. If Hugh realized that fact emotionally, his boredom could die right here in this backyard with Kenny. But the moment passed. Hugh's pattern of conflict and of boredom was too rigid, too strong for him to break. Another crisis came that night when Ralph Collier followed up his morning phone call.
Well, there it is, boy. Biggest contract our outfit's ever landed.
But where do I fit in?
Are you kidding? A job like this requires a real field man. Well, I came to the best I know.
Ralph? Do you mean you'd put me in charge of this whole job?
What else?
Boy. For 2 cents I'd do it, Ralph. This is a project, fella. We're
Hugh, please. You're not a child anymore. You have a family to think about.
She's right, Ralph.
You, boy, you don't know what you're saying. Why, this is the greatest challenge you've ever been offered.
No go, Ralph. No go.
Are you really serious?
Serious, Ralph.
Just chalk it up to my window. Don't bother you, I'll let myself out.
Ralph, perhaps we could discuss this...
Sorry I wasted your time.
Oh, Hugh, I'm so glad you didn't let him talk you into that awful job. I mean, being left here all the time with Kenny, oh, dear, there are lots worse things than being a little bored.
Sure, honey, sure.
The day is ended, a day to plunge Hugh even deeper into boredom. And yet there still is hope for him, for out of the day's events, a dim awareness is growing in him, a vague realization that perhaps the road he's on isn't quite the one he wants to travel. Though alone, he's no longer capable of decisive action. He still can win if he'll get proper help. All it demands of him is the first step. Can he bring himself to seek that help? Does he have the strength and the courage to break down the walls of fear that pen him in? Or is it too late? So late that he'll live out his years in futility and frustration. Another good man fallen prey to the creeping paralysis of boredom, tasting for himself the bitter gall of conflicts unresolved, potential unfulfilled. It depends on him alone. Unless he finds help soon, not just this day, but life itself is ended for him. Ended in another bleak, needless tragedy of boredom at work.
Christmas time, the holidays. Is this the way they end for me here in this place? A mental hospital, they call it. That's a fancy name, that is, but I know a better. The Bug House, a place where they'll lock you up and then throw away the key. And now they've got me, too. Me, Fred Clanton. Fred Clanton, Fred Clanton. Is that really my name? Oh, everything's so mixed up. These grounds, these buildings, they're all so dark. Everything's dark, even the sky. I'll never get out. That George, he's turned them all against me. Even Betty. They keep talking about me. Why won't they let me alone? Oh, my God. Oh, no, don't let them take me in there. I'll never get out. Oh, God, what will happen to me now?
What will happen to Fred now? What happens to all of them? The men and women from every walk of life who each year pass through doors like this, into the mental hospitals of our land. Here, in the story of Fred Clanton and the typical Oklahoma State Hospital to which he came, the spotlight focuses on these people. Many patients are old, and often theirs is a tragedy of hospitals such as this. The tragedy of fathers and mothers too old to work, rejected by their own children, classed as senile and committed to mental hospitals because there's nowhere else for them to go. Yet, given proper care, they can still adjust, make new friends to ease the passing of years. Some patients are disturbed, unable to care for themselves in normal life situations. Others are physically as well as mentally ill. Many are capable of limited adjustment, able to work at varied tasks within the hospital. There's the veteran returned from years of service overseas. The farmer who had never set foot outside his home county till he came here. Deterioration, chronic conditions limit hope for some. Others may go home tomorrow. Meanwhile, they're living here. 3,200 men and women all gathered together in a modern mental institution, a city in itself, complete with every facility for effective treatment. Though shortages in hospital personnel do exist, patients are secure and comfortable, and most of them are happy. For while mere custodial care can never be enough, a favorable environment and human comforts are essential in any therapeutic system. For most, meals are served cafeteria style. Food is plentiful and good, an investment in patient health. Just baking the bread for 3,000 people is a man-sized job. Above all, though, these kitchen chores offer patients work, the therapy of busy hands. The laundry, more chances for patients to focus on specific realities outside themselves. First step along the road that leads to recovery and release. The patients tell you the power plant smokestack is 525 feet tall. They seem to take a personal pride in it, maybe because power is so important here. The sick must have heat and light, there's water to be pumped, and food cooked, and laundry washed. Patients must be housed, and today's new hospital buildings center on human needs and comfort. Whether they provide living quarters or treatment facilities, whether they're for convalescents, older people, the tubercular, veterans, or occupational therapy, these modern structures are part of a long-range integrated plan to improve conditions for all who live within these grounds. Special units provide homes for nurses and attendants, for they too play a vital role in helping patients to regain health. In addition to the regular staff, student nurses come here to learn to recognize and care for the mentally ill. There are lakes for fishing. The hospital farm cuts operating costs, provides fresh truck and dairy products, and the familiar scenes, the work, help make patients from rural areas feel at home. They come from all sorts of homes, these patients, all kinds of backgrounds. But somewhere along the line, life became too much for them. Some apply for voluntary admission to the hospital, one of the 3 procedures by which residents may enter a state mental institution in Oklahoma. Many former patients return of their own free will when new troubles assail them. All applicants for voluntary admission are held a minimum of 15 days for examination before they may be released. Other patients are certified for admission by 2 competent medical examiners. This is the second method by which patients enter the hospital under the terms of Oklahoma's mental health law. The majority, however, come by court order, committed either by a judge or a 6-man jury. This was the case with Fred Clanton.
Fred Clanton? Oh, yes. How are you, Fred?
Well, I'd be all right if they just left me alone.
Well, why don't you tell me about it?
You can't fool me. I know you're in with them, too.
Fred, I'm going to send you to the hospital. And if you will cooperate with those doctors, I think they'll be able to do you some good.
The admitting clerk records Fred's case history as soon as he enters the hospital. Takes care of valuables until he is sufficiently improved to be trusted with them. Escorted to the receiving ward by an attendant, he's bathed and outfitted. He gets a blood test, part of the medical examination given each patient on admission. There's a chest x-ray also, and a spinal fluid test. Finally comes a neuropsychiatric check, designed to bring out data related to the patient's mental disorder.
They're turning my wife, you know, Betty, against me. They're taking up all her time.
Why do you think they're doing you this way?
Well, I've been working on this for years. They don't know it, but I'm on to them. You see, if they can just get Betty to team up with them, then they'll all try to get together.
A clinical psychologist gives Fred a variety of specialized tests in order to make possible a more accurate evaluation of his total personality. Following the examination and testing, an informal meeting of the hospital staff arrives at a tentative diagnosis of schizophrenia, paranoid type. Fred benefits from the skill and experience of all members of the staff, as well as the psychiatrist to whose care he is assigned. Diagnosis and staff approval completed, the patient is transferred to a treatment ward for therapy. In Fred's case, insulin shock is prescribed, a common treatment for schizophrenia. Electroshock therapy may be recommended for other disorders. Hydrotherapy is useful in calming disturbed patients. So are sedative packs. But whatever the mode of treatment, it's essential that it be supplemented by an atmosphere of security and calm. The effective hospital must always serve as a refuge for its patients, a place where they can live quietly during that period of reorientation in which they learn how to achieve a better adjustment to the world outside. Degree of adjustment, the level of orientation, varies sharply from patient to patient. Some show a complete loss of contact with reality, dark shadows across disordered minds. In other wards are light and life, a return from private worlds to the here and now. As patients improve, they are moved to wards in keeping with their condition. They're given the opportunity for contact with others who are also getting better, shown that their status as individuals is recognized, that no matter what their problem, there still is hope. In Fred's case, insulin therapy brought relatively quick improvement. Close linked with it, helping further, was personal follow-up attention by the psychiatrist directing his treatment and care. Occupational therapy, reinforced shock treatment, helped Fred to draw away from his feelings of antagonism and suspicion and move closer to reality. Boredom is always an enemy of the mentally ill. Now improving, Fred begins to take increasing interest in the wide variety of recreational facilities. Patients enjoy movies just as much as anyone. And a hot game of dominoes or pool or ping pong is always fun. The sewing room's popular, and a permanent wave may serve as a milestone of self-respect for many women in spite of the bubble gum. Books mean so much to so many. Improvement brings added privileges, a more normal life. What could be better than an afternoon softball game? Friday dances give Fred a chance for contact with women on a social plane, help to spark his dormant pride. Religious services in the chapel offer inspiration. Then there's the happy day when Fred is granted grounds privileges.
Fine, Doctor. As a matter of fact, I feel like going back to work.
Well, you'll have to stay around the hospital for a few days. Maybe we can find you something to do here.
Oh.
How would you like to help us out around the hospital here?
I don't know whether there's much I can do or not.
We have quite a few jobs that you might do.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you might work up at the dairy, you might help out in the garden, or you might work over in the cafeteria, or we might even be able to get you on the ground crew.
Ground crew?
Yes, sir.
I'd like that a lot, I really would.
Well, that's swell. You just report out there in the morning and everything will be all right.
In the morning?
Yes, sir.
What a difference it makes. At last, Fred can be outside once more, working, enjoying the sun and the seasons. There are the days when visitors come, the chance to talk again with Betty, and George comes too. And now, somehow, he doesn't seem quite as bad as he did before. It's not too long till the psychiatrist decides that Fred can try it for a while at home. He talks with Betty and with George, helps them to understand that they too have vital roles to play in aiding Fred to adjust successfully to the world outside. Then the words pass to the switchboard to call Fred in. How well he looks. A cigarette from the doctor. And Fred's hand is steady. packing at last. A man can be proud of the things he's created with his own two hands, and a hospital can be proud too. Proud to see a patient face the world as a man again.
So this is it. Today I'm going home. 6 months it's taken. If I'd come here sooner, I might have been out in 3. But all I could think about was fear, the way everyone was all against me. How much I hated George. How wrong I was. Or no, not wrong, sick. And now that I'm well again, I can't help feeling just a little sad. The way you always do when you leave a place where you've lived, learned, and grown. But I am well, and I know it. I'm able to face the world again. My own hometown. I suppose there'll be some folks who'll stare and talk and sneer. But no matter what they say or do, one thing I know. These people here, this place and time, have given my life back to me.
This is a story about one of the mental mechanisms of man's personality, his displacement of anger on to other men, and how it impairs his efficiency in everyday living.
My name is Ed Wilson. This is my story, but it could be yours. If maybe I hadn't felt like I was on a spot, resented it. Then there was the flat tire that made me late for work this morning. Frank said I'd look plenty sore when he passed me. I sure had to admit that one. Who wouldn't be mad with the tire ruined? But according to Frank, a grown man doesn't feel like he can throw a tantrum over a flat tire. So he stockpiles his temper till something else comes along that he can scream about. Something like my smudged drawing. Only when you react 10 times too strong, like I did, you just buy yourself more trouble. Carter? Sure, he was a pain in the neck, but he was using the headache switch himself, Frank said. Seems he had a screwball wife. She was so jealous, she phoned him just about every hour on the hour. Had him all on edge.
He'd even whopped himself up an ulcer. And he took it all out on the hired help, bossed everybody around on the one hand, slopped up things himself on the other. It wasn't a pretty picture. I began to feel sorry for Carter instead of mad at him. Maybe even understood a little better how much trouble that old headache switch can cause. But I had work to do, that spoiled drawing to trace over. So it still didn't sink in too deep. What happened that night was a different story. If there's anything I hate, it's a messy-looking yard. I let Sarah have it straight. Maybe too straight. She let into Joy. Sent him out to clean up the mess he'd made. He went out all right, but to sulk, not to work. Then I saw him try to kick Rags, and that did it. Joy loves that pup more than he does Sarah and me both put together. If being bawled out about the yard tied him up so tight he'd even kick Rags, well, all of a sudden I didn't need any more blueprints about how the headache switch works or what bad business it can be. All the trouble that day, even after what Frank had told me, I'd left the plant with a chip on my shoulder. The mess in the yard gave me an excuse to blow up. I took it out on Sarah. She let off her steam at Joey. He dumped his headache on Rags. And Rags, well, he's taking it out on the neighbor's cat. Talk about your vicious circles. And it didn't even get results. Joey sure wasn't doing much about that mess in the yard. I felt like 2 cents. Went on out into the yard to try to make things right. Kids go a lot farther when they learn to enjoy what they're doing. Make a game of work. Share it with somebody who doesn't act like it was a prison sentence. Soon as Joey saw I really intended to help him, he pitched in too. That's the way kids are. They copy folks around them like crazy. In half an hour, we had a clean yard. We both felt a lot better, too. And Joey had started to realize that work can be fun. From there on out, I learned fast. Hardly a day at the plant, but I picked up some new twist on the way people switched their headaches. Mrs. Nugent was one of my best teachers. According to Frank McCoy, her trouble was another gal, Miss Howell, Mr. Bragg's private secretary. Not that Mrs. Nugent saw it that way. She claimed her whole problem was typing. It gave her headaches, real skull splitters. But Frank could remember when the headache started. Right after Miss Howell got the promotion Mrs. Nugent wanted. Only Mrs. Nugent couldn't bear to admit that she'd let her work and her looks get sloppy. So she began to have headaches. Especially when she had to take orders from Miss Howell. Miss Howell was Mrs. Nugent's real headache, but Mrs. Nugent switched it to her job, her typing. Pretty soon, things got so bad she'd have to quit work early. She convinced almost everybody, even Mr. White, the office manager. But poor health can backfire, especially when it's a headache switch. Mr. White finally decided Mrs. Nugent was more bother than she was worth. The headache switch cost Mrs. Nugent her job. For Tony Luciana, it was worse. He paid for it with his hand and his trade. Tony was a punch press operator, and a fast one. But he had headaches at home. A kid who seemed to make a business of getting into trouble. Serious trouble this time. Tony was mad. Mad at the boy, mad at the officer, mad at himself for not having any answers. He brought his burn to work with him, took it out on his machine. Science gave Tony a new hand, but he isn't an operator anymore. And it didn't have to be that way either. You can learn to handle a headache switch just like any other bad habit, once you face up to your feelings. According to Frank, the first step's to look at your mood a minute before you blow your stack. That's what I hadn't done when I let go about my smudge drawing. One of Frank's favorite tricks was to talk out his troubles, make jokes of them. It got rid of a lot of tension for him. The way you feel about your work makes a difference, too. Take old Gus Peterson. He's proud of his skill, too interested in his job to waste time on small headaches, including me. Gus's experience makes him an important man around the plant. If he builds up steam over anything, it comes out in better work. With Ballpeck, it's different. He sweeps just for the pay, gets his kicks outside the shop, at home in his garden. He's got a headache, a bad grouch, he takes it out on the weeds. And weeds he can chop down without making anybody sore. And that's the way it goes. Each man's got to find the system that works best for him personally. Like O'Shea, he's our top salesman. Lets off steam now the same way he did when he played for the Redskins, running touchdowns on tough customers. O'Shea's got the team spirit. Selling's a game to him. Our company's his outfit. And if he's got any tensions left over, sports are still a good way to cut 'em loose. For O'Shea, that's a good system. But everybody uses the headache switch one way or another. It's just that some folks don't understand it, so they let it foul 'em up. It makes Carter a bum supervisor. Cost Mrs. Nugent her job. Tony Luciana lost a hand on account of it. Other folks play it smarter. Like old Frank, he laughs his troubles off. Gus Peterson works his out. Baltic chops his down with the weeds. O'Shea forgets his on a golf course. Good tricks, all of them. They work. I found that out when I began trying them myself. So I had a bad night. Okay, I learned to take that into account when the coffee tasted awful. Just admitted I'd tasted better instead of yelling bloody murder. And it paid off. Sarah told me the stuff was just a sample of a new brand. Said she wouldn't use it again. Bad day at the plant? I tried to get my mind off it by planning a new cabinet for Joey's room. Even bought the lumber on my way home. I found Carter's ulcer couldn't touch me if I was bearing down on my work, really interested in it. Before I knew it, I was a better draftsman, maybe even in line for Carter's job someday. Grease on my pants? I told Frank about it, made a joke of it to help get it out of my system. And it warned Frank, too. Let him know this wasn't exactly the best day I'd ever had. Trouble with Joey? I parked 3 blocks from the plant, walked off some of the steam. Then old Frank retired. Sure, we played it for laughs. But saying goodbye rocked me hard. He taught me a lot, been the best friend I'd ever had. But the real payoff came next day. I felt bad to begin with, knowing Frank was gone. And as if that wasn't enough, here sat this new guy. A cold-looking fish if I ever saw one. He hardly even said hello to me. I gave him a special ink tracing job like Carter told me to. He didn't act too happy about it. Next thing I knew, he'd spilled India ink all over his first drawing. A draftsman who didn't even know how to open an ink bottle. What a jerk. What am I gaping at, he asked. Brother, I nearly let him have it. Only then those ink blots hit me. Why, this was just like it had been my own first day here, even to the headache switch. This new guy, he was me, really, jittery, shook up, scared to make a mistake. So he took it out by freezing on me. Well, Frank had understood. He'd set me straight even when he knew I'd maybe bite his head off. So now, could be it was time for me to take the same chance with this new man.
Crying out loud. Why don't you just relax and take it easy? First day on the job, it can be pretty rough, you know. Besides, I don't think you're helping things any by pulling that old headache switch.
Headache switch? What's that?
Well, you see, it's this way. Everything starts off bad during a day, and then you...
Yes, anger at work, displacement, the old headache switch. One of man's problems in everyday life.
These boys and girls will spend some part of their lives in a mental institution. My job is to try to keep the people around here healthy, and most of them are. Of course, nobody's health is ever perfect. Jim Anderson has a bad ear. But that doesn't keep him from playing on the football team. County champions last year, too. Frank White is nearsighted, but his glasses take care of that. Dorothy Westerly has a tooth that needs fixing, but she's in good health, I'd say. Mighty good health. They've all learned habits of good living that have helped them stay physically healthy. Habits of cleanliness, good diet, exercise, and rest. But there's another side to good health, and that's good mental health. Comes naturally to most people. Parents who are mentally healthy bring up the children to be mentally healthy, too. Take Tommy Clark there. He learned the first rule for good mental health a long time ago, about not bottling up his emotions. Now, when he works up a head of steam, he puts it to work in a useful way, instead of holding it inside. When you try to do that, it's bound to come out in some unpleasant way. Tommy learned that some years back, just after his younger brother was born.
Come on, Jimmy. Have some. Come on. Tommy, eat your meat. You haven't eaten a bite all day. I declare, I don't know what's got into you.
You heard your mother, Thomas. Now do as she says.
Finally, his folks sent him to see me. There wasn't anything physically wrong with him that I could find, so I began to talk with him. If you've got something on your mind, Tommy, why don't you talk about it?
Well,
We all have our problems, Tommy.
But I can talk about it.
Of course you can. And you know something? The more you talk about your problems, the easier they are to solve. It's bottling things up inside that's bad. When you feel something, if you're mad or afraid or worried, you've got to let it out or it'll come out some other way. Like you losing weight and not sleeping. Now, what is it, son?
Gosh, Dr. Martinson, this may sound kind of funny to you.
No, it won't.
I don't think my folks want me anymore. They're planning to get rid of me.
What makes you think that, son?
I heard them say so one night. They thought I was asleep. Ever since Jimmy was born, they...
Well, it wasn't easy to prove to Tommy that he was wrong. As in so many cases like this, his parents were partly to blame. The new baby was taking more of their attention than they realized. I got a chance to talk to Tommy's mother about it, and it turned out that they'd been talking about sending Tommy to camp for the summer, and he'd misunderstood them. Well, we finally got it straightened out. But it taught Tommy a lesson that many people don't learn so quickly, about not bottling up his emotion. He learned that it could be easy to talk to his folks and that he didn't have to hide his love for them.
Good night, Mom.
Good night, Tommy.
Well, that is quite a few years ago. Tom's graduating today. That #1 rule for good mental health, don't bottle up your emotions, has helped him through many a tough spot. Of course, we're talking about some of the simple rules for staying in good mental health. And that brings us to the second rule, which is respecting yourself. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But look what happened to Bruce Matthews. He went out for the tennis team a couple of years ago, and while he had a lot to learn, he had the makings of a fine player. But he wasn't satisfied with slow, steady improvement. Oh, he expected himself to be perfect right from the start. Missing a point would make him boil over at himself. Well, the coach finally caught on to what Bruce was doing to himself with his demand for perfection.
Sure, I think it's fine to keep wanting to improve. I understand that, but I think you're going at it the wrong way.
How do you mean?
Well, did you ever stop to think how good your game really is?
Yeah. After missing that last point?
That's just what I'm getting at. You're worrying too much about the game and you don't enjoy it.
But, gee, Coach, I know I can do better.
Sure you can. But the point is you shouldn't let yourself get mad every time you miss a point. Why, even the world's champion can't make every point. You can't be perfect. You've got to learn to get more pleasure out of this game. So take yourself as you are, and instead of expecting yourself to be perfect.
It took a while for Bruce to get what the coach was driving at. But little by little, without letting up one bit on trying to improve his game, he learned to enjoy his skill rather than fret over his occasional misses. Yes, he's learning that second important habit for keeping in good health. Good mental health, I mean. The habit of feeling right about himself. Along with that goes a third important habit. Feeling right about other people, too. That means getting along with others, having fun with them, being part of the group. There's no room for bashfulness in good mental health. To look at Otto Markel there, you'd never guess what he was like a year ago. For some reason or other, he was convinced that people just didn't like him much. He never tried to make friends or to be one of the bunch. It was Miss Reinert who came to Otto's rescue.
I think you'd enjoy getting into one of the school clubs.
I don't know. I really don't have any time.
I hear they're planning to organize a camera club. You could help with that.
I'm not very good with my camera. I don't think they'd want me in the club.
Of course they would. The more the better when you're organizing a club.
Gosh, Miss Reinert.
You're certainly doing well in chemistry, and that's important in photography.
I don't know. Chemistry's different from photography.
I think you'll find they'd welcome a good chemist like you in the camera club. But you'll have to do one thing.
What's that?
Offer to help. Do all you can to help get the club organized. Get some other students to join.
Oh, I couldn't do that.
Of course you can. And you'll find that they'll like you as much as you like them.
I knew about Otto's problem because his parents had come to see me about the same thing. Of course, they had to share the responsibility for Otto's bashfulness.
What do you mean, George? I don't quite get what you're driving at.
No? Well, I'll tell you, Art. I've been watching you with that kid a long time. You're demanding too much from him. Nobody can be perfect, so don't ride him so hard. When he does something you don't like, remember he's a person in his own right. His way may be just as good as your way.
I do think you've been hard on him at times, Arthur.
Oh, but he doesn't toe the line the way he should. He has advantages I never had when I was a boy. He has an opportunity to amount to something.
But let him do it his own way. You've got him feeling now he isn't as good as the next fella. That's why he hesitates to make friends. In Otto's case, as in many others I've known, talking with the parents was important in helping to get things straightened out. He's learning the third basic rule for good mental health, feeling right about other people. That means that in any normal group of people, there is a feeling of give and take. There's an interest in the group as a whole. There's no distrust or dislike of others just because they happen to be different. Well, there's one more rule for good mental health. And I see that Nancy's finally learned it well enough to get her diploma. That's the habit of doing something about a problem as soon as it comes up.
Class dismissed. Gosh, what I don't know about the Civil War period. I haven't cracked a page in 2 weeks. I'm going to have to dig into this one, too. Come on over to my house tonight. Let's study it together. Oh, I just dread getting into it. Let's put it off till tomorrow. Well, all right.
tomorrow never came for Nancy. That quiz day found her completely unprepared. But Barbara had faced up to that quiz the day it was announced.
Oh, Jay, I've been so worried about this exam. I just can't sleep. Oh, I hope I pass. There's no point in worrying about it now.
Nancy not only had double trouble with that quiz, she had triple trouble. Before, during, and after. If she'd got busy just as soon as it was announced, instead of just worrying about it, it would have been a lot easier for her. Yes, the people around here are learning some of the basic rules for staying in good mental health. First rule is, don't bottle up your emotions like love, fear, anger. Express them naturally. Of course, emotions like anger have to be expressed with consideration for others. Above all, don't carry a grudge. Get it off your chest. The second rule is to respect your own abilities. Always try to improve, but remember that you're human. The third rule is to respect others. Treat them as friends. And finally, when a problem shows up, face it at once, calmly, reasonably, and honestly. And remember that one of the best rules for good mental health is talking out your troubles and problems with someone whose opinion you respect. Your parents, your family doctor, your school teacher or advisor. Your clergyman may be the right person to talk to on many things. Whoever it may be, talking is one of the best tonics there is for good mental health. Another good tonic is an interesting hobby. Gives you a way to relax, a chance to accomplish something you can be proud of. Well, those are some of the rules for staying in good mental health. Of course, they're just the ABCs of a subject big enough to fill whole libraries. But as more and more folks get to know these ABCs and follow them, they're going to be able to look at a group like this someday and feel that they have a greater chance than ever for the kind of happy, useful life which will make our world a better place to live in.